Hi, welcome to the Israel First television program with myself, Martin Blackham. We're looking this week at a new organization which is in the news, all the sovereignty and Judea and Samaria. And this organization is called Return, O Israel. And in the studio we've got Samuel Solomon. Thank you so much, Sam, for coming in. Great to have you with us. Appreciate you giving us your advice and wisdom. And the issue of sovereignty has recently been in the news because of Donald Trump and because of the Judea and Samaria communities. So we're going to be looking at that today and helping you to understand. We want you to have a better understanding of Judea and Samaria at the end of the program. So tell your friends because it's such an important subject. Basically, Judea and Samaria, you can see there, it's such a large area and it's the biblical heartland of Israel. This is a book on Judea and Samaria. It says the biblical heartland of Israel. So Samuel Solomon is in the studio to talk about that. Sam is a successful entrepreneur and business executive with nearly 40 years experience in the legal, financial, information, technology industries. He's actively involved in a number of philanthropic activities and boards. Sam is a team member of the growing sovereignty movement and chairman of Return, O Israel, the organization we're going to mostly be talking about today. Christians in partnership with Jews for complete sovereignty. He's written a blog for the Times of Israel and has been a jury consultant on US television and has done all, you were telling me, you've done all sorts of things. You've done Good Morning America and lots of different TV things. So thank you so much for joining us and helping us to explore Judea and Samaria. So let's first of all give the viewer, you're watching and saying, well, what is Judea and Samaria? So maybe we can give them a bit of geography. And we're talking really about the east side of Israel and the side that was given to Israel under the mandate, but was occupied by Jordan, isn't it? It's that whole area.
Correct. Well, no, Judea and Samaria is on the west side of the Jordan River.
Right. But the east side
you
of
are
Israel.
Correct. It's the east part of Israel, based on the way after 1948 and the war of attempted extermination, annihilation of the Jewish people here in Israel. When the armistice was finally declared, Israel was not able to maintain their hands on Judea and Samaria. And so it went illegally to the Jordanians who illegally annexed Judea and Samaria. It was actually recognized, I think, by only two countries. One was your old country, England, and the other one, I believe, was Pakistan. And no other country recognized in the entire world the illegal annexation of Judea and Samaria.
It was an occupation, wasn't it? The Jordanian soldiers came in and didn't go when they should have gone. And so if you're interested in knowing more about the legal rights, we have done an interview with Ambassador Alan Baker on this whole issue of the legal rights of the Jewish people to live in the land of Israel under international law. And I know a lot of you out there you're Israel advocates and you will want the information, so go and have a look at that video. That's got a lot of information on the legal side. So you're originally from America. You're not an Israeli or a natural Sabra, but you're originally from the United States and from New York and involved in business, high influence business. So how does a businessman who's in New York, how does he come to live in Israel, and how was all of that?
So, in brief, I lived in Israel. My father was a member of the American military. I lived in Japan. My father was a bird colonel and a chaplain in the United States Air Force, and so I was living in Japan. I was very lonely. I was basically the only Jew in my high school, in a military school, and so I graduated early and came and lived in Israel from the ages of 16 to 18, from 1970 to 72, which is where I developed my Hebrew and fell in love with the country. And so my parents insisted, this is a pretty common story, that I go back to the States, finish college, then I met my wife, and we had kids. By the time life goes on, and I basically evolved my company to the point that I was able to sell it so that we could both make Aliyah, or the Aliyah actually means to go up,
right?
To move
Israel, from the United States to Israel
in 2010.
And so, how did you get involved with a sovereignty? We're talking about the rights of the Jewish people to have their native-born land, the land of their ancestors, the land legally given to them under international law. So, how did you get involved in sovereignty? And there's the Women in Green. So tell us a bit about how, because you could have done anything. There's so many different volunteer organizations in Israel. Why was it sovereignty that you particularly have got involved in?
Right. So the issue around sovereignty for me is a core issue it's not just, by the way, Judea and Samaria. We are under enormous international pressure, we meaning the state of Israel, to basically open up our borders, to not deal with sovereignty with the Bedouins in the Negev, not to deal with sovereignty of the Temple Mount. I mean, there's lots of it, which is a violation of both the rights of Christians and Jews to pray there. So there's a lot of issues of sovereignty, but the heart of it is with Judea and Samaria, because that is the heart. I can tell you one thing your viewers should know, I can rest assured, that when Moses brought the Jewish people, he did not pass through Tel Aviv. Okay, and he brought the people up, they went to Judea and Samaria. King David sat on his throne in Hebron. He did not sit in Ramat Gan, which is a modern suburb of Tel Aviv today.
Let's have a look at this organization. So it's called Return to Israel. It's a new organization, I believe. Yes. And Sam is running the organization with a pastor, and it's Pastor Reverend Anthony Abma. Is that the correct?
Yes.
Right. And you met Anthony, and
well, he reached out to us. Okay. Right. So, and this is something in general in terms of the spirit of giving and volunteerism of our Christian brothers and sisters, and that is Anthony was interested in the sovereignty issue, and he came out of it I would call it a theological basis, not an ideology, but a theology that said that the biblical promises that are contained in the Tanakh, and his Hebrew is actually pretty good, those promises are critical for the overall redemption. And put to a side, he says, what does redemption mean? Because that sometimes makes Jews a little nervous, because there's, who is the Messiah, who's the Mashiach? He says, let's put that to the side. Let's talk about what is necessary for any form of redemption, and that is for the Jews to be present and to have control of Judea and Samaria as part of the biblical heartland. So he reached out to the organization Women in Green to say that, hey, I'm here, I'm a Christian, and I want to be involved. And for a lot of Jews still, and you can understand with the Holocaust and 2,000 years of persecution, especially by the Catholic Church, which most of my Christian friends, don't care for it to begin with. So after all that persecution, many Jews are nervous about the connection. Actually, this is changing in real time. There's really a strong ferment of connection between Jews and Christians. But in the beginning, right now, it's still we're in baby steps.
I think there's a lot of people out there. You're out there today even, and you're saying, Anthony, we're with him, Sam, we're with you, in this whole movement. So they're watching today. Because they're already saying, how can we get involved? There's a website, Return O Israel.
Right, www.return, just as saying return, the letter O, Israel, with no periods or anything, just returnoisrael.org. Anthony is running the organization, and we have a number of ways people can get involved and engaged. And the whole idea is bringing together engagement. And that involved, first of all, talking about it, talking about sovereignty, not being afraid of having that discussion. It's become so liberally PC that you're not allowed to talk about Israeli sovereignty. Actually, it's become very PC. You're not even supposed to talk about Israel anymore, but let alone sovereignty. So the first is to talk to your friends about it, to bring up the subject of people that you share faith with in your church. Also talk to your politicians. That's really important. Advocacy is a critical aspect. There are many forces, I'll call them the forces of darkness, that want to cover up the truth of Judea and Samaria as part of the Jewish heartland, and we have to have that conversation. And then for those who are interested in giving, either time or financially, there's opportunities. They can do that on the website. There's also praying for Jerusalem. That's very important. And we are aligned with any Christian organization that cares about supporting the Jewish people here in Israel. So we have many connections now with many Christian friends and other organizations.
And if you'd like as well, I'm not sure when you'll be seeing this program, but at the time we're coming into the studio, you're doing a tour as well with the organization, I believe, a tour of Israel.
Yeah, I saw that. That's something Anthony's running. I don't even know the particulars. As chairman, I let him. I don't try to interrupt and jump on people with that. I do have to mention one thing about it. Why Return of Israel? What is this ingathering the exiles? So something for your viewers to think about. Right. There are 3 promises that will result in the redemption according to the Talmud. One is the ingathering of exiles, that when that occurs, that is the beginning of redemption. The second is the growing of fruit trees. Believe it or not, if you look at the part of the curse that happened when the Jews sinned and we were evicted from our country, was that the land did not produce a lot of fruit anymore. It's really amazing. And you read Mark Twain's travelogue, he talks about how barren the country is. Other people wrote about it. Christian missionaries who came here in the 1800s write about how barren. Only when the Jews came back, if you look at this place, it is totally, I'm here in Har Adar, just filled with lemon trees and fruit trees and everything. And the third is the building of large cities.
Wow.
Those are the three promises. So the ingathering of the exiles, return, O Israel, is critical to the redemption.
It's amazing because, you know, a lot of what you may even maybe yourself at home you think this, but a lot of people have this picture of Israel as a camel in the desert, and in Tel Aviv you can actually get stuck in traffic. It's a huge city. There's they've got a light railway. They're building under construction, so it's a bit chaotic. In Jerusalem, the entrance to the city of Jerusalem is now under construction, so there's all this traffic, and there's this big there's highways now going back and forth, the internet, Microsoft, and so people have a certain picture in their mind, but actually Israel is very different.
Very modern. It's
right.
a member of the OECD. It's a first world country with a first world economy. It's a strong country. Look, we're surrounded by enemies. I was mentioning earlier the map that when you look at Israel within the Sea of the Middle East, not the one where you zoom in on Israel, but the one where you see Israel in context of Egypt and Libya and Syria and Iraq and Iran and the hundreds of millions of Muslims that surround us, many of them not our friends, ISIS on our side door, our back door, Iran and Syria, Hezbollah, which is an agent of Iran with over 150,000 missiles in Lebanon. We're not in such a great neighborhood, but we have, thank God, the blessings of our strength of the country and our faith. And actually, you know, the country has a very strong connection to God. Even among the secular here, they say that faith here is at around 80% belief in God. Actually, by the way, it's greater than the U.S. It's less than 60% in the U.S. Most Jews keep some form of Shabbat. They keep some form of Passover. Almost every Jew keeps Passover here, and also our non-Jewish friends keep Passover here. So it's a country with a lot of connection to faith, because you can't be in Israel and not see the miracles that occur, because the miracles are extraordinary for what this country has done in 70 years. Now,
one of the questions that our friends at home have, Sam, is that how do they speak to, they're in a situation, maybe you are working on a campus, or maybe they're working in a hostile environment. How do they explain, or how would you explain the situation for the people? They'll say, well, what about the Arabs who are living in Judea and Samaria? How do we sort that out without being racist, or what's the...
Right.
Because they'll be there and they'll be like, I need to argue this question because people are bringing this up all the time.
So there are all types of resource material on Return, O Israel. There's other material as well. People should feel free if they want to reach out to Anthony. We'll send them. I just finished an article that's being distributed to all our Christian friends within Congress in the United States on how to really practically envision sovereignty, which really is, in parentheses, what are you going to do with the Arabs in Judea and Samaria?
Right.
Well, the real answer is we live with them. In Judea and Samaria, unlike in Tel Aviv, people interact and work with Arabs and Muslims and Christians. There aren't as many within the Palestinian Authority, because there's so much prejudice against Christians within the Palestinian Authority. Bethlehem, for example, birthplace of Jesus, there are almost no Christians living there anymore. It went from 70% Christian to probably the real numbers under 5%. Wow. You know, Christians should be very concerned about that. The only country in the entire Middle East which has a growing Christian population is right here in Israel. Wow. It's being eradicated throughout the entire world. In fact, I sit on the board of an organization that produced a movie on it called Faith Keepers, on the destruction of Christian communities throughout the Middle East. It's tragic, it's horrible, and they like to say, the Muslims, the radical Muslims, of which there are quite a few, by the way, by numbers, there are at least 100 million, is first they're going to go after the keepers of Sunday or Saturday, and then they're going to go after the keepers of Sunday. Well, that means first we're going to go after the Jews, then we're going after the Christians. So I'm
going to put you on the spot a bit.
Sure. Please.
About your colleague in Return to Israel. Is he available if the people are watching and they'd like to invite him to speak about sovereignty? Can he?
Yes.
Can he do that? And
How's a direct answer? They should get they should get in touch with him. I asked them to change his email address to add this extra one, so it's either a.abma at returntoisrael.org, or I'll make sure he has it done, Anthony, which is a lot easier, Anthony at returntoisrael.org. Yes, he's available to speak. He's available to consult with people. He's available to work with your pastors and your lay leaders to talk about what really is going on here and how people can get engaged and involved and participate, and to develop this basic group of Christians that are not just supporting Israel, which is important, critical, but are supporting specifically the biblical promises of the Jewish people in the heartland of Israel and Judea and Samaria.
And one of the issues that keeps coming up when we're talking about Judea and Samaria is the so-called peace plan, the so-called peace with the Palestinians. So-called there's all this. How does that affect the sovereignty?
That's a great. You're smiling as you say it because you know that it's so. Look, there's been the fundamental issue with any time. Would Israel be willing, as a country, to give up some of its indigenous historic homeland in order to have a real quote-unquote peace? And the answer is, of course. The Israelis wanted. It's the nature of Jewish people. Oseh shalom, ohev shalom. We do peace. We love peace. Our Aaron, Moses' brother, was known as a rodef shalom, one who chases peace. So peace is and those are not empty words. It's just part of it. We're tired. This has been going on for thousands of years. Right. Enough already. The issue is that there's no way we can have an agreement with. So think of it like this: your next door neighbor comes to you and says, "You know where the line is, where your fence is? Actually, I don't want the line there. I'd like the line right next to your back door because I think that's my land." Okay? Well, that makes it kind of difficult to negotiate. That's not a starting point for negotiation. And by the way, if you don't like it, I'm going to blow up people. I mean, what type of conversation is that to have? Mm-hmm. The problems and this, by the way, the Arabs in Judea and Samaria know this. They know they have a corrupt, incredibly corrupt, almost mafia-style organization called the Palestinian Authority that is taking the money from all these international organizations. Most of it is lining the pockets of the politicians within the organization. Abbas is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The chairman, his kids are worth hundreds of millions.
Do you think people know that?
No.
Because it's just not a well-known.
No.
And is it a hidden fact?
No, it's actually because it doesn't fit the narrative of most of the media. So therefore the media doesn't want to talk about how corrupt it is. But if you go to the regular Arab in the street, actually there's videos of this, and you say, what do you think of the PA and the Palestinian Authority? And they'll usually not want to mention their name because people are actually, it's a police state there. At this point, the official Palestinian Authority position is that we're not the real Jews. We're really Khazars from Russia. The real Jews have disappeared. King David was a fiction. The temple, which is crazy because it's in their own books, the temple never existed on the Temple Mount. And the original Jews were Palestinian. And here's the best part. This should insult every Christian. Here's the best part. Jesus was a Palestinian.
Right.
Oh, come on, guys. Shouldn't Christians get a little upset about that? What do you mean Jesus was a Palestinian? There was no Islam. There was no... Palestine was something created by the Romans after Jesus' time to punish the Jews due to the Bar Kokhba revolt. Israel was always called Judea. It always was. In fact, there was the debate whether to call Israel or call it the state of Judea. In the end, it is decided to call it the state of Israel. And that's why we're called Jews, because we're from Judea. What type of fiction is going on here?
Yeah, it's anti-Semitism, really.
Yes.
And it's amazing how much anti-Semitism is in the world and in the church, and so it's a wonderful work that you're doing with Anthony. I want to ask you, we're coming to the end, but I want to ask you something about what's the relationship like between Jews and Arabs in the Judea and Samaria. Because a lot of people, because you watch the news and they're given the wrong story. So is there apartheid? Or is Rami Levy with a big wall in the middle?
You said that word because Rami Levy was exactly the words I was going to say. You're referring to this supermarket that was built by a very famous supermarket builder by the name of Rami Levy. There's one over here right by Har Adar, right? And there's one right in the Gush Etzion, actually where those 3 boys were kidnapped and murdered by Hamas terrorists a few years ago.
Right.
And so, everyone's mixed. If you want to really understand, for your viewers, first of all, you have to come to Judea and Samaria. If you are on a Christian tour group, I'm finding this out, that is avoiding Judea and Samaria, I mean, how are you going to Bethlehem then? Why are you not in Shechem? I mean, it's amazing. That's where all the events took place. But if you're coming here, you have to go see the Judea and Samaria. And one of the things you should insist from your tour guide is, don't take me to some archaeology and dead rocks. Right. Do me a favor. Take me to the Rami Levy and the gas station over there in Gush, and you will see interaction between Arabs and Jews on a regular basis. I used to live up in the north, which is actually 60% Arab and 40% Jews in the upper Galilee. And I took pictures of it and put it on my blog once, of being at Cellcom is a cell phone company. And I would go into the Cellcom store in Carmiel, okay, which is right there in the center of the Galilee, and there would be a mix of Arabs and Druze and Jews, Christians and Muslims Jews with long beards, and Arabs of various head coverings and stuff. You see democracy at work. We are a real democracy, and that, more than anything, offends the liberal press, because they believe that they actually have the only patent on democracy. And what democracy for them is their view, their ideology, of which Israel can do no right. But the fact is, you come here, you see it yourself, it will be a true conversion experience for any of your listeners.
Right, and we did take a tour to ourselves, Natalie and myself. We went over to Otniel, and we took a tour there, and the people were so welcoming in the community. They showed us the community center, the yeshiva, the community, and the people are so welcoming in the different communities, and I'm sure that if you come again, some of you have come to Israel. One of the issues is, I need to say this to you, one of the issues is that people come to Israel, they go on the tour, they visit all the holy sites, and they go to Jerusalem, they go to the Galilee, they go to Tel Aviv, but what they don't do is interact with Jewish
Correct.
people. And a lot of people are frustrated at that. They're like in the bubble of hotels and the bus, and they don't actually interact with Jewish people. But I think we're in a time now, and this is a whole issue in itself, of working together, of Christians and Jews working together, and that's what you want. You're watching today and you want that, and I know it's a conversation that Anthony will be able to follow up, and
Absolutely.
And your good self.
You should send a note to Anthony, an email saying, I'm coming with a tour group. I want to make sure I'm interacting with Jews and Israelis. I want to see the real Israel. We'll make sure that happens. I'm meeting people all the time. I just met someone the other day on a vacation, and he said to me, I'm coming to Israel with my Christian group. Over 10,000 people come, wow. And they do not go at all to Judea and Samaria. He says, I'm offended by it. I want to see it. I said, here's my card. Reach out to me. I'll take you there. I'd love for you to see it. So it's very important. I do have to mention something about interaction with the left, with the peace movement and all that. So I have a friend. His name is Ari Abramovitz. He has a beautiful facility at the most east part of the Gush area. I forget the name of it, but it's
Which
a beautiful
is
facility.
South Jerusalem area.
Right, South Jerusalem. And he has Peace Now activists who are left-wing activists protesting on a regular basis, trying to disturb his Sabbath, and taking pictures and just being harassing. Anyway, a few weeks after they were doing all this, the heads of the town, the local Arab town, which he interacts with on a regular basis, called him up and said, we want to visit you in your home. They had no idea why they wanted to do it. They came over and they said, look, we know you're being harassed by these Peace Now people. We want to tell you, we love that you're here. Listen to this, Martin. We love that you're here. Do not pay attention to them. You are connected to us. We want you to be part of this. We want to do this together. That's what's really going on. You should know that for the most part, the people that were like King Hussein, the current King Hussein, his grandfather was assassinated on the steps of the mosque in Jerusalem, coming out from prayers, I believe during Ramadan, was assassinated. You know why? Because he called for collaboration between Jews and Muslims as cousins. And he was assassinated for it. This is the problem is so cultural for them, for the Arabs. They have so much work to do, and the more that the liberal media tries to cover it up, the worse they're making it for the Muslims and the Arabs.
Yeah, because one of the things that was very serious was the SodaStream problem, where there was the SodaStream were involved in Israel with having people working for them, Palestinian Arabs working for them in the communities, and they were forced, because of left-wing BDS and all the nonsense, they were forced to have to move the factory and lay off all the Arabs.
500 families. So, the implication of that is tens of thousands of people. If you want to go, here's another one. You want to see how people interact, you need to go to the Barkhan. Have you been to the Barkhan industrial zone?
Right, I've heard of it, yes.
Oh, you got to come with me. You'll come with me with my friend, Chen Ben Lulu. And Barkhan is all collaboration. Half Jews, half Arabs working in all these major industrial companies. And not because it's for show, it's because it's in our best interests to improve the economics of the Arabs living in this area. So to get to your other question you asked earlier, the Behran conference that just occurred and economic, we're all in favor of that. That is separate from the political issues. From an economic standpoint, no one wants anyone to starve here. No one wants the ecology here to be destroyed. Right. I like to say if someone flushes the toilet in Ramallah, it shows up in Tel Aviv. It's, Ramallah is what? 15 minutes from Jerusalem. We're all living on the same piece of land. And that's why sovereignty is also so important, for environmental reasons, for integration reasons. And the fact is, we're a real democracy. And the Palestinian Authority is a complete and utter dictatorship.
Well, thank you so much for coming in today, Sam. Great to have you with us and explaining for all of you at home the issue of Judea and Samaria, the biblical heartland of Israel. And go to their website and you'll find out a lot of information on there. Also, you can visit our website, www.israelfirst.org. We have a lot of information on there. Also, if you'd like to email us, we'd love to receive your emails. Email us at info@israelfirst.org. And remember, we're the program that looks at the land, the people, and the language.